Welcome into a preview of UFC 224, and as we've done before, we've brought in a guy that's not only a great fighter, but he's a great predictor of fights too, boasting about a 78% success ratio. Got no proof, but that's what he tells me. Dan Hangman, great to have you in here.
Thank you very much.
Exciting card overall before we go through it fight by fight?
Yeah, well, I had like a really close look at this fight, the whole card, and I wasn't too impressed at the start, but once I actually had a look at the fighters and how they match up, like I'm really excited top to bottom. Like the main card, there's some fights on the Fight Pass and on the undercard that I want to see just as much, if not more, than fights on the main card. I think they're all really evenly matched, and I'm actually very interested to see how a lot of these fights play out.
Matchmakers do a good job in some of these events, don't they? And you get real contrasting styles, like you'll get a guy who's good on the ground versus a guy who's good standing up, and then you'll get two stand-up guys and two ground guys. They get a real good mesh together. Yeah,
well, that's the beauty of MMA. Like fights are so evenly matched because you can have a world champion grappler against a world champion boxer, and it's really unpredictable how that fight is gonna play out. So you got to go back, watch the fights, look at the evidence. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not like a $10 blowout, it's all evenly matched. So you got to take a much closer look at each fighter and their skills and weaknesses, and try to figure out how they match up when they kind of mesh together.
Right, we're going to go through fight by fight. I think there's about 12 fights on this card, so we're going to go through one at a time and just get your thoughts on the fight, how you think it might stack up, and then we'll get you who you think's going to win and how. So we're putting the acid on you publicly. Mate. So the first one is Marcus Perez against James Boknovic, American, going to Brazil, fighting Brazil. And Boknovic, he's an 88% submission expert against a guy that's probably more suited to the stand-up. How do you see this one?
Yeah, this fight is, so it's two new guys to the UFC. They both had one fight in the UFC, and that first fight they've both lost. So I had a look at their fights and their past fights. Boknovic, he's very wild. He's a very fast starter. I think most of his fights finish in the first round, so he comes out fast. He comes out looking to finish and get that finish quick. Good against the cage, but his wrestling is not that sound. And then I've gone back and watched Perez, and his footwork is nice. And he fought a very tough opponent in his debut, Eric Anders, a very athletic striker. And he was able to get through that fight without taking any hard shots. So for Boknovic to come out and get a knockout is very unlikely. Eric Anders, Perez's last opponent, was a very strong wrestler, very good against the cage. And he struggled quite a lot to get Perez to the floor. So I'm pegging that Boknovic won't be able to get Perez to the floor. He won't be able to cut him off, force him against the cage, and get him to the floor where he needs him to be. Boknovic, because he likes to finish so early, I feel that he will tire as the fight goes on, and he's a very big guy. His last fight was at 205, and he's making a cut down to 185 middleweight. So he's dropping weight, and Perez is a very good-sized middleweight. I see him getting a TKO in the later rounds. Perez, TKO. As the fight draws out, Boknovic kind of fizzles out, wears himself down, and leaves himself open.
Beautiful. I like that. Perez is the favourite in that one. A little bit closer together, but still have a pronounced favourite in the next one, and the favourite being Ramazan Aviv against Alberto Mina. But Mina's unbeaten, and he's at home against the Russian.
Yeah, so this is one of the ones that I have really been keeping my eye on. So Minta he's 13-0. He's a former BJJ world champion, undefeated, but he hasn't fought since 2016. So he's a mix of injuries and contract negotiations. He's been sitting on the sidelines for quite a long time. And momentum in this sport is a huge factor. Like staying active, staying inside the cage, staying relevant, and keeping your momentum into your next fight is very important. So he's lost that momentum. He was coming off some good finish wins. I think his last one was a flying knee knockout with some punches, and that was very impressive. He was very impressive when he burst onto the scene, but now he's looking at one of these Russians. Very strong Aviv, very strong Russian stylist. He's been making waves in his side of the world, and now he's coming over to Brazil, take on this undefeated Brazilian. Ameev, very well-rounded. Minter won't be able to use his jiu-jitsu against him. Ameev is too strong on wrestling. He's a former Sambo world champ. I see him defending the takedowns. The momentum's not with Minter. I see him not being able to get Ameev to the ground because Ameev's wrestling base is too strong, and I'm picking a TKO for Ameev. Again, maybe in the middle, maybe in the later third round.
Thales Lates, I think we pronounce this guy's name, against Jack Hermansson, the Joker, a Swedish fighter who comes in as a slight favourite here. And I was just looking at their significant strike percentage. Like Hermansson lands on average 5 punches a minute versus Lates at just 2 punches a minute, and the accuracy of Hermansson is better as well. Is that why he might be slight favourite? How do you read this fight?
Yeah, this is more due to Thales Lates. He was on fire when he came into the UFC. He's fought some of the best guys, and he's done well against them. He's not been blown out of the water by anyone. So he's fought some real tough. He's fought the elites in the middleweight division, and he's done considerably well. He's lost decisions, but he's not been blown out of the water by anyone. Hermansson, on the other hand, I've gone back and watched him. He's striking his feet all over the place. He makes some real errors on the feet. So he leaves himself open. He leaves himself exposed. His wrestling is not great. His jiu-jitsu is not great. For me, I feel like Lates is going to bring back a bit of his old form. So I'm not counting him out for this one. I think Hermansson just leaves himself open, and Lates is too calculated. And he hasn't been able to get his finish in his last couple of fights because the level of competition he's been against has been so high. But now he's fighting a guy around about, top 50 in the world. So this is a guy that I definitely feel that Lates can find his feet again, find some form again, and really take out. Lates has moved away from his, world champion grappling as of late, but I feel like he'll move back towards that, and I've got Lates with a submission in this fight.
Nice. Then we got another Brasilia-Russia matchup with Alves against Aliyev, Sultan Aliyev. 50-50 Alves on the submission count, whereas it's a little bit more balanced for Aliyev. Is it a bit of a mystery fight to know how this is going to go, or have you sorted it out?
Wally Alves has faced some real top competition, and he's beaten a lot of top guys. Alan Jouban, Nordine Taleb, Colby Covington, he got him with a guillotine choke, and he's fighting for an interim world championship. So Wally Alves has been the only guy to finish a guy fighting for the title, a number 2 or 3 ranked guy in the world. So he's faced some real tough competition, and he's only lost to some high-level grinders, guys that get in his face, get him down, hold him down, and make it an ugly fight, and he's lost the decisions there. So he's not been finished, and he's beaten some of the best. Aliyev is a grinder. He's Russian, so he's well-rounded, big looping punches, likes to get his double leg, get guys on the ground. But I don't feel like Aliyev has faced a level of competition that Wally Alves has faced. I think Alves' takedown defense will hold up, and he is much faster on the feet. I feel like Aliyev slowed down in the later years. He's very muscle-bound. He's a bit slow. And Wally Alves, I think Aliyev is tough. So I don't think Wally Alves is going to finish him, but he's going to be too fast on the feet. Takedown defense too good. Wally Alves via decision.
Then we move into the undercard. Elju Zaleski dos Santos. Hell of a great name. The Brazilian takes on a USA guy, Sean Strickland, who's fashioned a pretty good record, 18 wins and 2 losses. This one looks pretty even.
Yeah, this is a real good matchup with the guys that have got some real momentum and some very good wins in the UFC. Winner of this, I feel like, moves himself very close to the top 15 in the division and really getting some big fights. Zaleski has a very good record, beaten some very good guys, and he's very sound everywhere. But Strickland is one of the guys, very few guys that I am actually a fan of, and I enjoy and look forward to their fights. And Sean Strickland is one of those guys. He just mixes things up beautifully, and he's beaten some real good guys. He's coming off a victory over Court McGee, who's an Ultimate Fighter winner and was cracking that kind of top 10. Strickland's only losses are 2 top 10 fighters. So I think the higher level of competition he's faced will give him the advantage in this fight. And I feel like his wrestling and his ability to mix things up will be too much for Zaleski. I see Sean Strickland with the decision by a wrestling grind out.
Wrestling grind. That's it. At the moment, that's at about 260. So that's not the worst price at all. Then we got Davi Ramos against Nick Hine. Now, I'm pretty sure you've trained with Nick Hine in the past.
Yeah, I've trained with Nick in Thailand. I trained with his brother-in-law in the States. So I'm pulling for him. He's 4-1 in the UFC. Faced some good competition. This guy just knows how to win fights. He's also a European judo champion. So he's got very good takedown defense. He's got very good balance. His striking is good. He's moved to a new gym. And he's working with trainer Anthony Hardonk, who is a former kickboxing world champion. So he's got a very strong grappling base, good defensively, good takedown defense. And now he's with one of the best striking coaches in the world. So we'll see. And he's had quite a long layoff. So I'm looking for some big improvements in Nick Hine as of lately. He's got a tough fight in front of him. Ramos is no joke. He's got some very fast hands, and he's a former jiu-jitsu world champion. It seems like every Brazilian that's in the UFC is a jiu-jitsu world champion, but Ramos actually is. Very fast hands, but he's doesn't cover the distance well, and he doesn't vary his striking that much. And I feel like against Nick, he will have to show something new, show some kicks, show something of longer range. So these are both pretty short fighters, and I'm going to give the advantage on the feet to Nick, and I feel like his judo base and his wrestling will be too strong. He'll be able to defend that takedown. I see it being a more tentative affair, but I see Nick taking this fight via decision.
Then we move into the big boppers. Alexei Olenek against Junior Albini, whose nickname's Baby, and he dressed like a baby last time. But boy, this Olenek, he's had 52 wins, 11 losses. That is a lot of times in the octagon.
Yeah, he's had a lot of fights, a lot of experience, very strong grappling background. But with all of those fights, it takes a lot out of your body. It does a lot of damage, and it slows you down. Now the Olenek we see, you'll see like all the older fighters, most of the older fighters that have had that amount of fights, they're very strong grapplers, and they have more of a grappling base, because that's kind of the last thing that goes is your old man strength. And Olenek's got that old man strength, but his disadvantage is that he is plodding, like he kind of plods along, and he does eat some shots to get the takedown. He's beaten a few really good guys via punch and via submission, but he's taken some shots to get those guys to the floor. Albini has not had the level of competition that Olenek has faced, but I like this kid. He's young, he's athletic, he's very fast on the feet, he's very fast hands. He was against a high-level striker in his last fight, so it's a very tentative affair. He's coming off a decision loss to Andrei Arlovski, one of the better strikers in the division. But I think that Albini's wrestling will, he's got the legs the size of tree trunks. I see his wrestling of being able to hold up. Olenek won't be able to force him against the cage. And as far as his hands are too fast. His hands are too fast for the older, slower Olenek. I'm picking Albini TKO in this fight.
Then we go to another Brazilian-USA matchup, Cesar Ferreira against Carl Robeson. Baby K, they call him. Not many fights, just 5, but unbeaten.
Yeah, not a lot of information on this guy at all. His fight on the Dana White Contender Series to get him into the UFC, I think it was 9 seconds. The guy shot him for a takedown and he knocked him out with a knee. His last fight, I think it was a first round finish. He got a submission finish after he looked very sharp on the feet. So total all up, I think this guy's got about 5 minutes of footage on him. So it's quite hard to look a bit further into it. But then Ferreira, a lot of top-level competition. He's got a mixed record, but he's been in there with some of the best, and he's looked good against some of the best. He fought Nate Marquardt. He showed me some very good things in that fight. There's a lot of things I like. He's very hard to hit. So Robertson is very athletic. He has very strong kickboxing, covers distance well. But I feel like Ferreira is sharp enough on the feet to negate that. So it's two good strikers that are good at range. I see this being a pretty tentative affair. When you get two strikers in there that are really good with one shot taking someone out, they generally stand all the way across the cage from each other and give him plenty of space. So I think this is going to be an interesting fight, but a very tentative fight. And I'm going with Ferreira outpointing the inexperienced Robertson in this fight.
So Ferreira by decision. That's a healthy 375 at the moment. That's not the worst. I've printed it off twice. Victor Belfort and against Lyoto Machida, both with interesting appointments in the past with chemists, and both been caught. So it's almost like, let's not test these guys, just let them rumble.
Yeah, TRT Vitor Belfort was one of the killers of the division, but then, he's failed some drug tests. He's had this sort of thing. This is actually his retirement fight. So Belfort has said, leading into this, that after this fight he will retire. And I can see why he picked Machida, because Machida's not going to push the pace. He's not going to grind you out. He's not going to take you down and beat you up. He's going to stand at long range. He's going to be real patient, and he's just going to look for one shot. So Machida's like a karate stylist, very long range, and throws single shots. So he likes to stand on the outside, jump in wait for you to commit. He's a counter fighter. Wait for you to commit with something. He'll try hit you with one strike, and he prefers to do it that way. So if you're going to have one last fight and you don't want to get beat up too bad, he's a pretty good guy to go against. He's going to give you plenty of space, and he's not going to make you that tired if you don't have that great of a gas tank, which Belfort has shown that he doesn't have anymore after his supplement failures in the past. But for me, I feel like Machida's too good at range. He'll be faster than Belfort, even though he's slowed down. I'm picking Machida via a pretty tentative decision in this fight.
All right. And say goodbye to Victor Belfort and his test results. John Lineker versus Brian Kelleher, both with quite a few fights as well. And I've gone through this and I can't choose this one at all. Another Brazil-USA matchup. Hard for me to pick this one, although we do have Lineker as quite a warm favourite.
This is my number one fight on the card. So this is the fight that I'm most looking forward to on the whole card. Lineker has fought for a title. He's been in there with TJ Dillashaw, lost a decision. So he's been in there with very good guys. Kelleher, boom, Kelleher. He's really making waves in the division, and he's done some great things coming off a win over former champion Renan Barão. And he looked very impressive in that performance. So he's really found some form. Kelleher is not afraid to try things. Like, he gets in there and you see him mix it up. He's takedowns, he's kick, he's spinning, he's going for anything. He's pretty much throwing the kitchen sink at you. So in this fight, look for Kelleher to be the one pushing the pace on Lineker. Lineker is more of a counter fighter. He'll wait for you to commit to range. He's shorter, very good boxer, very powerful hands. I think his hands are stone is his name. So he waits for you to commit, counters with those big shots. Lineker has great takedown defense, which will be a problem for Kelleher, who likes to mix things up. When you're mixing things up, but a guy's takedown defense is too good, it negates a lot of your skills. Close fight, expect Kelleher to push the pace, but I'm going with Lineker in this fight. Lineker via decision. Kelleher's a very tough guy. I don't think he'll take him out, but I think his counter boxing will be too much.
Lineker by decision, 225. Geez, all the ones you're picking are over $2. This is good. Mackenzie Dern against Amanda Cooper. I get the feeling that UFC are trying to turn Mackenzie Dern into a bit of a big name. They sort of haven't had the female big name with the sponsorship ability since Ronda Rousey, and she's got a pretty good pedigree.
Yeah, so they're trying to replicate what they did with Ronda Rousey. Mackenzie Dern is a world champion grappler, one of the best female grapplers in the world, and now she's turned her hand towards MMA, 6-0, undefeated. She was taking out girls left, right, and center, submitting them, finishing them quite quickly. But then in her last fight, I think it was a split decision. So it was a very close fight. I actually had her opponent winning that fight in her last one. So very, very close fight. I can't help but think that Cooper has been handpicked, cherry-picked to be beaten in this fight. She's 3-3 as a professional, and all 3 of those losses were via submission. And she's fighting Mackenzie Dern, who is a world champion submission artist. So I'm backing Dern, the BJJ world champion, via submission in this fight.
And that's at 235 as well. That one sounds like one of your most confident picks of the card.
Pretty confident that she's been cherry-picked to lose in that one.
Ronaldo Souza, a really colourful character, taking on Kevin Gastelum, Brazil, USA, both pretty experienced guys.
Yeah, Souza, Jacare, he's the elites. He's in the elites of the middleweight division, that top kind of echelon of the division. He's in title contention with every fight and has been for quite a long time. You put him in the same category as Yoel Romero, Robert Whittaker, Chris Weidman, Rockhold, and Souza. These are the elites of the middleweight division, and he's really earned that right, and he's had some very good runs and some very good victories. World champion on the ground, one of the best grapplers in mixed martial arts today, and now he's figured out how to knock guys out. So he's turning into a very deadly proposition. Gastelum, on the other hand, did very good at welterweight, missed weight a few times, and was forced by the UFC to move up to middleweight. But he's had some very good results, knocking out Michael Bisping in his last fight. So he's had some very good fights as of late. But I feel like he's still an undersized middleweight. And Jacare is one of the bigger guys at middleweight. Very muscle-bound, very good size middleweight. So I feel like the size will play a factor in this. And that Gastelum does mix things up well. He likes to mix his takedowns with his striking. But against Souza, you don't want to take the guy down. So then that negates half of your skill set. So I feel like this is going to be a striking affair. I feel like this is going to be a kickboxing match. But with the size and power advantage going to Souza, I'm backing Souza via TKO in this fight.
Do you think Souza will know that of Gastelum, that he knows that he won't try and take him down because that's his strength and that helps him in his training camp?
Definitely. So because of his credentials and his skills on the ground, it forces you to strike. Like, it forces you don't even want to try to take the guy down. He has good wrestling chops as well. So Souza's no mug with the wrestling, but I don't see him wasting energy trying to get Gastelum down. He knows Gastelum's not going to try and take him down, so he'll be very confident in his stand-up. When you know a guy's not going to take you down, you can be very free to throw spinning techniques, to throw jumping techniques, to throw with real power, because you're not worried about the guy ducking underneath you and putting you on your back.
Then we have the main event of the evening. Bruce Buffer will go nuts. He'll jump and he'll point, and I don't know how he keeps his voice box in his neck, but he does. Amanda Nunes, the shortest of favourites on the whole card against Raquel Pennington. Very one-sided priced fight. Can Raquel Pennington shock the world?
Short answer, no. So Nunes is a killer with the hands. Very big for the division, very long for the division, very powerful, very sharp on the feet, good wrestling. And now she's been 5 rounds. So before everyone, kind of her hole in her chink in her armor was her cardio. People would say, oh, you drag her into the later rounds. If you can kind of wear that early damage, you'll beat her in a decision. She's got no cardio. She fought Shevchenko and she went 5 rounds with her. Looked very good, getting takedowns later in the fight, which is very difficult. And that shows that your cardio is there. That shows you've got very good training behind you. So I don't think that chink is in that army anymore. Pennington, you know, she prefers to strike, but she has mainly submission wins. I think her first professional fight, she got a TKO, and that's the last one she's had. So you got a striker with no power.
You're right. 11% KO and 56% decision, 33% submission. So, yeah, not the KO girl.
So when you're a striker and you got 11% KO ratio, it's not looking good for you against one of the best, biggest, longest, fastest, most powerful strikers in the division. I'm backing Nunes TKO, and I think there's some good odds on which round she takes it out. So she's paying. It's not that great to have her win, but you pick her, she knocks her out in the second or third round. I think the second round we're looking at $4.50, third round it's $11. So if Pennington's chin holds up for a couple of rounds, you might be looking good for a later round finish.
Brilliant. Well, that's the card for the ladies UFC. You can watch the prelims. What do you call them? Prelims on Fox with a Fight Pass?
Fight Pass. So the Fight Pass prelims, yeah, you can get the Fight Pass app. I think it's $7 a week, and you get about one card every week.
And the first week's free as well. I've just been told the first week on Fight Pass is free, and then you can watch all the rest on pay-per-view on Sky. So thanks, Dan. Really looking forward to this. And how far away are we from your next thing? Oh, you're ready to go today, I know.
Yeah, in some negotiations with the UFC at the moment to get something lined up soon. I'm feeling really good, really motivated off my last fight, so I'm looking to get back in there as soon as possible.
Brilliant. That's the same answer he always gives me, as soon as possible. Thanks, Dan, and enjoy UFC.